Hey guys, welcome to a quick walkthrough of my tutorial on breaking art block. So the concept here is to sculpt in 3D, in this case using 3D coat, in order to generate kind of cool compositions and to have fun while I'm doing it as well. So going into this, I had really no idea what I was doing. Um, I just opened up a thing, opened up a new project, created a sort of flattened cube, and I'm just sculpting into it and having fun. I really don't know what a lot of these tools even do. A big part of this is just kind of replicating that feeling of being a kid with a bunch of clay or putty or whatever and just kind of messing around. And you're going to start to see shapes emerge as you do this. You know, I'm having a lot of fun right now with this kind of raised ridge, making it look kind of shell-like. Um, and as I said, I had no real concept of what I wanted to do going into this, but already I'm starting to see this kind of feels like it could be some sort of creature, maybe like a snake or something rising up from an environment. And that's what this is all about. It's really about finding things um, in nothing really, finding shapes, like finding shapes in clouds, you know, seeing shapes and then kind of working into them. So I'm just grabbing, I'm mostly using the extrude tool here, and I'm just kind of pulling shapes out. 3D Coat is very intuitive. The interface for a start is very similar to Photoshop's, which is great. I've used ZBrush a lot before, but I just find that its workflow isn't quite as intuitive as this, and it's also quite cheap, which is obviously good if you're a student or just a poor artist. I'm sure all of us are. But yeah, at this point, I'm kind of feeling a direction already, and all I'm trying to do is take this to a point where I can start to see something I can work with in Photoshop. Because I mean, this is going to be a 2D illustration, and I'm starting to create ideas here. Um, Obviously, this is sped up a lot. This entire painting process took about 12 hours, and I've shortened it down to about half an hour here. So please forgive how incredibly choppy it is. I just didn't want to dwell too long on any one stage because there's a lot of parts to this. So the first part is very much, going in with no clear idea of what I want to do in my head and just playing around and having fun. And once I've got kind of a rough sculpt that I'm happy to move on with, I'll take it into a 3D renderer where I can play around with lighting. Quite often at the end of this stage, I actually won't have anything even this finished. It's unusual that I kind of came up with an idea this early. In this case, it's some sort of rock dragon. Um, just because those rocks were making an interesting shape that turned into a dragon in my head, and then that sparks the creative process. It starts thinking about what's the storytelling here. Is this some sort of dragon that's made of rock, kind of rising up out of the landscape? And I don't even necessarily need to use this composition. This is just spending an hour having fun and thinking about trying to create a story in my head. And having done that, I've already kind of achieved the point of this tutorial. The rest is really just bringing it into Photoshop and turning it into an illustration. But this part here, the first 5 minutes of this are the kind of key thing. It's not going in straight into line art. It's not sitting down and planning an illustration, because obviously that's really important as well. But if you're just doing something for fun, the whole problem with art block, or where it seems to stem from, is stress. It's frustration. It comes from feeling inadequate, or just finding that your work just isn't doing what you want. And this is a really good technique for breaking away from that, because all you're doing is messing about and having fun with it. So here I've brought it into Octane Render, which is a really, really good, fast renderer, which does really nice lighting. And I like it personally because I'm a total 3D noob still. I've been using it for years and I'm still terrible with it. But Octane, you see here, I'm just trying to find a composition and then using this ACE tool that they have, where you can click on areas of the map and it'll simulate the light. for that place based on the time of day you set. So it's really powerful, and it doesn't require placing lights. You can just sit there, find yourself a composition, which is what I'm doing now. I'm trying to find something where the dragon is rising up out of the ground, where we can really see that the terrain. And then I'm just playing around, just moving my mouse around on that little map and trying to find an interesting balance of light and dark. And that's really all an illustration or a painting is. It's just the play of um, light and dark. I'm just experimenting with the background here, throwing in some kind of photos to try and see what kind of mood I'm going for. Um, and again, we don't even need to use this 3D model at all. It can just act as a reference point, which is pretty much what happens actually. Although I do experiment with it for quite a while. And once I'm happy, I just save out a bunch of different render passes. So you can just save out, just save the shadows as a layer, that you can access in Photoshop. Or save out the Z values where, as you go back into space, things become lighter. And this is all just useful stuff in Photoshop for painting. You can see here now we've taken it into Photoshop. And I'm just starting to mess around with these, with this composition. Because obviously this was unplanned. It is a mess. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed. So here I'm just using the quick mask tool to select areas of the composition, and then I'm using soft brushes to kind of push it back into space, basically adding atmosphere. So you see there, like by adding a little atmosphere behind those rocks, I've created a little more distance between you and the creature, which makes it feel bigger. And then I've gone into the Z value thing, just so I can start sketching over it and start, making it a bit more designed. Going through my photo library, I've got tons of reference images. The ones I use in this tutorial mostly came from Noah Bradley, and F. Mercier. They've both done really nice stock photo reference packs that you can get on Gumroad, which are quite handy. And yeah, I'm just doodling right now. I'm already not sure that this is necessarily the composition I want to go with. The dragon doesn't feel very powerful in this thing. He looks a bit slow. He looks like he's kind of just like a cat raising its head slightly, which I'm not crazy about. But again, the whole idea here is just to think about this stuff and to start creating a story. Because an hour ago I didn't have anything in my head. Now I'm thinking about this kind of cool dragon thing. So I'm just starting to, I'm just experimenting right now. Put some flame in his mouth, to draw attention. What am I going to do with the wings? Kind of considering the composition here, I want to lead your eye right into him if I can. So, we can use the wings to kind of pull you into the image pretty nicely. So yeah, I'm still kind of pushing this around a little bit, just trying to find something. I think I worked on this version of it for a good couple hours actually. I'm just raising the head because it was feeling a bit weird how low it was, but it's still not quite what I need, I don't think, to be a really exciting illustration. And if you've seen the end result, then you'll know how different it becomes. But that's a good part of it. One of the major lessons that I've actually learned over the last few years of working is not to be afraid of just taking the idea and then starting from scratch with it. And that's definitely something you can take away from this, hopefully. It's actually a pretty good thing to be able to do, just to go, you know what, this idea is cool. I really like this dragon concept. I think it's kind of dramatic, but the actual execution isn't quite working. Let's try sketching a new composition. And also drawing on top of your work constantly. Trying to keep it in a sketch form as long as possible. I'm not worrying about detail at all right now. There's no point, until you've worked out, until you're happy with what you've got in terms of composition and in terms of light. There's really no point in going into detail. you know, you've heard the phrase polishing a turd. You know, you can add all the detail you want, and photo bash all the textures you want on top of a bad composition, and it's still going to be a bad composition. But that's not to say you shouldn't, keep working on it for a little while and see if you can pull something out of it. Um, a really good way to sort of kickstart that realization that your work isn't going where you want it is to take big breaks. In this case, everything I've been doing so far was done in a few hours in one day. But pretty soon I realize it's not going where I want it to go, so I just take a break for the night. I stop working on it, walk away, and come back fresh in the morning. And almost any time you do that, you're going to come back and realize either, oh, actually, it was fine, rather than just scrapping it, it was actually working really well. Or you'll discover that, it is garbage, as you'd expected, and you can kind of go into it and fix those problems. And during the course of this painting, which, like I said, it was a good 12 hours long. I did it over the course of a week and a half, I think. I took several long breaks because I wanted it to work, but it just wasn't going where I wanted it to. So here we go, just kind of throwing in some rock textures to see if that'll help. But of course it won't. I've also added some eggs, so the storytelling aspect is coming through throughout this process. I'm trying to now think about why this dragon is here. And here we go, I'm starting to redesign the composition now. So I've taken a break, and I'm just rethinking the composition to be a bit more dramatic. I didn't like his massive head. He just felt too slow before. He felt too heavy and just too awkward. But yeah, that storytelling thing. We've got this kind of dragon doing just standing there right now, which isn't very interesting at all. So it's really a case of building the story as you work on the thing, Um, I'm doodling the lights in here and then going, right, why is this guy here? What's he doing? Is he fighting other dragons? Is he protecting eggs? Flame would be cool. So here we go. I've added in a bunch of little dragons. And now something cool is starting to happen. Like, we've got a scale battle going on. We don't really know how big these dragons are. So this one is definitely huge. We know that. So I've just kind of doodled it in. And then I apply full screen layer, sorry, over it. And push the opacity back just so I can start sketching details on top of my initial sketch. You can see here, I'm just playing with the anatomy, fixing it. Now, one thing you're not seeing in this video, I am referencing continuously. I actually cut pretty much all of that footage just because of copyright in this video, but I am referencing all the time. I've got images of Komodo dragons, paintings of dragons by other people, lizards, frilled lizards and snakes, and all sorts of stuff. And every time I'm struggling with a piece of design or I'm looking at the anatomy, I will just load up Google and I'll look up, an appropriate reference point. It's really, oh, there you go. It's really important to reference in your work. I can't say that enough. A lot of younger artists think that it's cheating or they want to be able to do it without using reference. And in time, you will build that visual library and you'll be able to do that kind of stuff. But someone put it really nicely to me when we were chatting about referencing, and she said, you should right now grab a piece of paper and draw a picture of your mum or your dad, someone you know intimately, someone you know probably better than most people on earth. And I guarantee you can't do it, without looking at reference. You've got a fairly good idea of what they look like in your head, but I bet you can't just sit down and draw your mom or your dad right now. And it's like that for everything. You think you know what a dragon looks like, but in reality, this is a made up creature. It's not real. You really need to be looking at examples of real animals to understand how that actually could work, or at least if you want it to be recognizable and interesting, to look like it is a real creature. And that's kind of what I was going for. It's quite stylized, but I still wanted it to feel like it could be a real thing. Sorry, this is going really fast. You can see at this point, the design of the dragon has changed. He's got more of a kind of Komodo dragon body, but the neck is very long. I actually shortened the neck in a little bit because it feels a bit uncomfortable right now. It feels, it's starting to feel like a Diplodocus or something, and that doesn't give across the power I'm looking for. So I want to add these little dragons in, and rather than just going in and painting a bunch of dragons, instead I loaded up DAZ 3D. Here I'm just demonstrating how you can make a dragon dance in DAZ 3D. DAZ used to be called Poser, and it's something I've used for years and years, to generate quick 3D poses of people. But the nice thing is in DAZ 3D now, it comes bundled with a just kind of generic dragon, which isn't super great for design, but actually in terms of being able to quickly pose a bunch of dragons for your scene, that took maybe 15 minutes to do. And I can just whap them in. I'm not worrying about lighting them or anything. I'll just do that, with paint. And all I'm really doing is saving them out of DAZ, putting them into Photoshop, and then just applying color straight on top of them. A multiply layer to darken it down, and then lighting it based on the lighting in the scene. And you can see I'm still experimenting a lot with. Well, I'm starting to experiment with the stuff around the dragon. The environment for this scene. I've added this kind of red orange sort of lava or something down the bottom, but the problem that creates is it's pulling your eye away too much from the focal point of the piece, which is the dragon's head in the fire. Um, in this story now, this dragon is burning another dragon that's attacking them. These small ones are definitely attacking him now. Um, I'm not going to I'm not going to show them actually firing. See, you can see that dragon in the top left is firing sort of blue flame at him. I actually take that out, so I leave it sort of fairly, these might not necessarily be attacking him. I don't know, but or these other ones could be coming to help. I don't know. I don't want to push the story too far, so that you lose your imagination on the piece. But yeah, that red stuff down the bottom is just distracting from that flame. Here I am just experimenting some more with the design. I don't want it to be a super generic dragon. And I really like the idea of it having a frill, um, or a sail, like a sailfish, or yeah, or a dinosaur. And you can definitely tell, watching this, I change every part of this image hundreds of times. Um, I'm still, this must be, a good 8 hours or something into the piece, and I'm still not happy with, I'm still not settled and ready to add detail. There's no detailing going on yet. This is still very much a sketch. You notice I'm working very small as well. Um, that's that's so that I don't lose track essentially of the composition, so that it stays zoomed out, and I can still, um, I can at a glance see what's happening, because that's really important. You want the first read of that thing to be powerful. Right now I'm experimenting with some sort of spiky rocks. This is getting very sort of Kotaki. It's getting very Guild Wars. um, but yeah, you see when I'm working this small, I can see all the problems in the scene very very clearly. And this is what I'm working to fix right now. Is just using every element of the picture to sell the scene. So the mountains need to work with the dragon. They need to point into it. Where the flame is, the background needs to be a bit darker. So that needs to either be cloud or it needs to be rock. I actually think there's some stuff that's working really well here that I got rid of later. And it's worth noting as well, like the final outcome of this painting, I would consider to be about 60% done. I would actually probably go back and spend a lot more time on it than I had, just because I'm not super happy with the final composition. But again, live and learn. It's all about growing and getting better. So at this point, I've been looking at some more reference pictures, so I'm kind of trying to get some cool rocks in there, some cool mountains, make him feel like he's high up. It's important though that they don't distract too much from the rest of the piece, because the key part here is Mr. Dragon burning small dragon, slapping in some some textures to see if that helps. I mostly just use photo texture to act as a base to paint on top of. Sometimes you can get nice shapes out of photos that you wouldn't have painted yourself or you wouldn't have expected to do. So that's kind of cool. Now this has a problem at the moment because the two sides of the composition feel like separate entities. They don't they don't feel consistent. So I'm playing around with that quite a lot right now. And at this stage, I drop it back into value to see what's happening, and I notice a bunch of problems like that. The anatomy of the dragon is terrible right now, and I hadn't really noticed. So dropping into values is nice because you can just ignore color and start fixing the issues. So I didn't like where that tail was going. It looked a bit, it didn't look natural. It feels like the tail should be down to balance out the rest of the dragon's weight. Um, so I'm just going in and trying to fix these problems. I took another break here as well for a bit of time. Here I'm noticing that the neck's a bit too long, the legs are a bit weirdly placed. So I go and have a break and look at some more reference pictures. And then here I've shortened the neck, and that actually has fixed a bunch of issues in itself. Um, I've brought the arm back a bit, so it's a bit more dynamic, and also the wings. So just generally improved the anatomy. And at this point, I am finally ready to start adding some detail, doing some rendering, which is good because at this point I can kind of relax. The last part of the painting was a bit stressful because you're just sort of trying to make it work. But now I'm just like, you know what, that looks cool. I like this anatomy. So now let's just have some fun. Playing with the frill, really trying to get like some subsurface scattering. So the concept that this is a very thin material, so where the light is bright behind, it's going to pass through and all, not quite glow, but it gives you that kind of very warm feeling. The same with the wings. Anywhere where there's thin skin, you'll see it on your ears. If you've ever looked at your ears with a bright, with a torch behind them or something, the way that the light passes through in the sort of very warm orange glow. So yeah, I'm just trying to bring in some of that here. Playing with the mouth. I'm looking at a lot of images of things like the Tyrannosaurus sculpts from Jurassic Park, as well as frilled lizards, and of course Komodo dragons. Um, and I'm still a bit scared to touch this flame effect, but I know what I'll probably do is use photos to help me with that, and find an image of a flamethrower or something like that, because that's essentially what it's doing. It's firing liquid flame from its mouth bits. But right now I'm trying to figure out how to do this neck. So I just spent a bit of time adding, using texture brushes to kind of imply detail there. Um, that's not actually my ideal way to work. It's just fast. I kind of prefer to try and render everything nowadays, if I can. And that's what I mean by this painting not being finished. Like, it would absolutely spend another bunch of time on this thing to render everything out, perfectly. But so here we go. I'm addressing this background now. Like I said, it didn't feel very consistent before. So all I've done is roughly painted the background onto a separate layer so that I can then apply different textures on top of it or draw on top of it without affecting the rest of the image. A much smarter way to do this would be to keep everything separate from the beginning, but I kind of like having layers go over the top of each other and having to paint it out. It kind of maintains that traditional kind of look that I'm really into. And this composition is starting. Oh, sorry, this background is starting to feel a bit nicer. Um, it sits with it a bit better. You've got the cloud, but there's a sort of break in the cloud here, which gives this guy in the foreground a bit of space to fly in. I'm not thrilled with him. I'm not sure about his positioning, but it kind of works to bring you in. I've taken him out right now. And again, not doing too much detail work in the background. You notice I'm flipping my canvas continuously. It's very distracting at this speed, so I'm sorry about that. But the idea there is just to see the image with fresh eyes. You know, back in the day, you would look at your painting in a mirror, and it's like coming at it for the first time. So I actually bind that to F1, and I bind flip vertically to F2 and rotate 90 degrees to F3. I just find them, for whatever reason, useful for just quickly checking out the composition or flipping it around to see how it looks in different settings. Here I'm just grabbing the dragons I had before. They kind of got lost a bit in the image, so I'm just redoing the positioning of this guy here. Same deal as before, create a layer on top, multiply, just kind of draw on top. He's getting disintegrated by this flame, so he doesn't need to be super detailed. There's no real consistency to the way I treat rendering. I kind of just jump about um, any work on an area, and then if I get bored, I'll move somewhere else. So I might go and do some work on his teeth for a little bit, and then kind of zoom out, and then oh god, I need to fix this frill, so I'll go and work on the frill. It's just kind of enjoying yourself and keeping yourself busy. This tail kind of gave me a bit of grief because I wanted to add that other dragon in the foreground, but it didn't work very well with the tail, so I actually ended up cutting the tail. Not sure that was the best idea ultimately, but um, yeah, it just wasn't quite working with the two things are kind of clashing a little bit. And I've been adding a lot of atmosphere here, just using a very sort of soft cloud brush. You get my brushes with the tutorial, so or at least the ones I used in this tutorial. So you can try that out. But it's a nice way to kind of quickly push back areas into the composition. I'm also using the smudge tool with a kind of textured soft smudge that I got from John Silva's Smudge Pack, which is a fantastic brush set just for smudging. And I use that just to kind of soften areas and make them look like they're vanishing into clouds. So you can see those kind of spires in the background that I like adding to all paintings for whatever reason. All I'm doing to bring those in is making some sort of big brush marks and then just smudging the bottom of them, and that gives you that kind of cloudy effect, like it's a very misty environment. We're very high up. So here I just grabbed our foreground dude and put him into Octane again, a renderer, and just threw a quick texture over it and gave it some light, just so I could pick out some highlights. It's not strictly necessary, but again, I just wanted to kind of add a bit of time. I just wanted to rework him a little bit. And again, yeah, with same deal with the other dragons in the scene. Just because they were kind of getting lost a little bit with all the painting and texture I'd been adding as I was working. So I just wanted to kind of clean them up a bit and add them in, give them some detail. I added a second dragon there into the sort of mid ground, and just to help you understand the scale as you go in. It's not perfect because the dragon that's in the flame is a little big, but dragons are kind of all sizes. You see, I'm just experimenting with some more blue flame there, but again, I just think it distracts a little bit too much. Instead, I've got them kind of flying into battle rather than specifically burning him. So, again, you could get the impression that maybe they're flying to help him. It's kind of up to you guys. It's up to the viewer to decide. I kind of like to, when I'm doing storytelling in a thing, in an illustration, I like to imply enough stuff that the viewer can create a story, but not give them so much that it's all spelled out essentially. And but this is pretty much nearing the end. I'm just trying to get this tail to work, but you can see here why it doesn't work with the foreground guy. I add in it, I paint that in, and that looks quite cool. But as soon as I have that in, it just becomes a mess. The thing I'm trying to do is lead you into the image. So here's the final. And you can see it's working pretty well. Everything's kind of pulling you into the big dragon guy. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that was in some way useful. Um, Feel free to add me on Twitter and ask me questions if you like. I'm at a big bat. And yeah, have a nice day. Thanks.